Welcome, and thank you for joining me on another Traveler's Notes video. Now, this is based on a different viewer's comment from a couple years ago, and I didn't respond, and I apologize. I did respond recently, but it's a good question. And the question was, did I come to alchemy because of trauma? And the truth is, no, I didn't come to alchemy because of trauma. I actually came to alchemy because I was in a group chat. I think it was a premiere of some video, and I was talking to a guy, and we were talking about how different people cause us to have tingles just by listening to them. I can't remember what the video was or what we were listening to or what. Something obscure, I'm pretty sure. But he suggested a couple of people, and I suggested a couple of people to him. Now, it may be that the reason why I get tingles from listening to intelligent people is because my Gemini, or Mercury, is in Gemini. And so is my Venus. They're both, Venus and Mercury are in Gemini for me. And according to some people, that means it's I think it's like a sapiosexual, which means that you're attracted to intelligent people. And that does describe me pretty well. And that's one of those reasons why I believe in astrology, is things like that. But it led me to D.W. Huck and alchemy. So that's how I came to alchemy. I came to it because it was actually recommended to me. Now, there is a saying that when the student is ready, the teacher emerges. And so apparently D.W. Huck was just meant to be one of my teachers. Now, at the same time, I was also listening to my one of my favorite people, Francesca Simon. She has a YouTube channel as well, and she used to do a Facebook video every, I say Sunday, that I would tune into. And she was a Rosicrucianist. She is a Rosicrucianist and a brilliant woman. And she introduced me to Paul Foster Case, and it was investigating Paul Foster Case that I came to his alchemy book. And then I wrote my alchemy videos that are so popular here on YouTube. Now, personally, I walk the path where I believe back in the 90s that everybody, all the secrets were supposed to come out. That this is the generation, this is the time that the secrets of the ages and the mystics were supposed to come out. I had that premonition back in the 90s. And it's interesting because Jamie Sams, in her book, which is Dancing the Dream, I believe is the name of it. I'd have to go make sure. But in Jamie Sam's book, she actually mentions that in the 90s that she and the tribal elders, I believe, felt it necessary to come out with all the secrets of their group because it was the time for the Rainbow Whirl prophecy to happen, where rainbow warriors would come forward and usher in a new age. Now, there's different ways you could say that, yeah, that prophecy is pretty much happening. And one of the reasons why I say that is because anybody who works with the chakras is working with the rainbow. And anybody who has aligned chakras are, in my opinion, rainbow warriors. So that's my interpretation of that prophecy. But I guess you could say that the LBGTQ group could also be rainbow warriors. I lean more towards the chakras. But either way, the rainbow is definitely a prominent feature as we transition from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. Now, I have said elsewhere, and I will say it here again, that I agree with Rabbi Dobin and his book Kabbalistic Astrology that we are in the age of Aquarius, and that we have been in the age of Aquarius since, I think, 1981, when the first air triplicity, Saturn and Jupiter conjunction, happened. And that was the marker of a new age. But you can read the book Kabbalistic Astrology if you want to learn more about that, or you can read my book The Purpose of Life, a brief scientific and magical guide to the zodiacal age of Aquarius. And either way, you'll kind of get the gist of what I believe. As for trauma and the path of the seeker, or the awakening, most people do come to them because of that. I personally did come to the path 3 different times. I was pretty much called. The first time was in the 90s, and believe it or not, I ended up with some books there wasn't really anything on the New Age shelf back then. There was just Dan Millman's The Way of the Peaceful Warrior and the Celestine Prophecy, which I don't know if many of you have read, but the Celestine Prophecy, looking back at it now, mentions the awakening. And I came to the path in the 90s because my grandmother passed away. She had open heart surgery and she was supposed to live a few more years as a result, but she only lived a few months, and I thought that was horrible. And I thought, wow, how could someone who was such a good human being, who helped so many people, and she was just the sweetest person I've ever met. I don't think I've met anyone who's half as kind as she is and half as beloved as she was to so many people. And it caused me to start seeking. So I read the Bible cover to cover, and then I went and I found the Celestine Prophecy on the New Age bookshelf. There was one bookshelf. There were not multiple. Even though Carl Jung had written all of his books, and there was a book on alchemy by Carl Jung, and Abraham Maslow had written his books. Those were all in psychology. Those were not on the New Age bookshelf. It was just Dan Millman and James Redfield. And I didn't really find the answers I wanted to there. I did get the experiential guide of the Celestine Prophecy, which was amazing. I still have it. And I have the 10th Insight and the 10th Insights experiential guide too, I think. And I may revisit those and work on those on my blog, and I might share some ideas with you from that on here. But it's still funny looking back that book, Celestine Prophecy, mentioned the awakening back then. That we were, back in the 90s, starting the awakening, which coincides with the 1981 as the start of the age of Aquarius, and that a lot of people just weren't aware of it. But anyways, I digress. So, first time I was called to awakening, or the path of the seeker, whichever way you want to call it, was back in the 90s. The second time was when I got divorced. Again, it was trauma. I divorced in 2005, and that was rough. It was just rough being on my own, and there was a lot of things that I had done that I had to own that was very difficult. And then I had a very brief relationship with someone, and I had 2 miscarriages, and one of those was a blighted ovum, which was very traumatic, and that breakup was very traumatic. So once again, I found myself on the path looking for answers, and I found a website that kind of had a bunch of links. It was called Alexandria H, and you would click on the link and it would take you down one rabbit hole or another. So I learned about Zachariah Stitchin. Back then I was watching Jordan Maxwell, all the conspiracy theorist stuff, the Anunnaki, all of that. And I found it very intriguing, but it eventually just kind of led nowhere. I was very interested by a lot of the different topics, like the Tree of Life and things, and there seemed to be something there that added up, but it didn't really hash out too much. By 2012, and that website was very much into 2012 and the Grand Conjunction and what it meant and the awakening, and that was very much the start of that movement that became the 2012 movement. I think Dolores Cannon, she fed into it with the New Earth idea. And by 2012, I was not on the spiritual path. I had just graduated with my MBA, my Master's in Business Associates, and I had quit my job and gotten a new job at a corporation that I thought was going to be my career. And yeah, 2012 was a wonderful year for me. It was one of the biggest parties I've ever had for my birthday. It was a great year. And then in 2015, things fell apart. It always seems to be 5 years, 2005, 2015. My daughter Lilithan was born prematurely. I was 5 months pregnant. She lived for 3 days and then passed away. And at that point I decided, you know what, that's it. And I went and had a past life regression, and that changed everything. And then I looked up Brian Weiss, and I did some past life regressions from home, and I did about 3 sessions, and then I was done. I didn't need any more than that. That was enough for me, and I started having out-of-body experiences, And yeah, that was just a very different, strange period of time. I was going through anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder, and whew, I'm just glad that's over. So I no longer have anxiety. I don't have panic attacks. These days I'm very calm and relaxed. Those problems are long gone. But that's really kind of what started my quest in earnest. And that's when I started my blog. And then eventually I ended up here on YouTube and doing these videos. And that's my journey. That's what brought me to the path. And I think that if anything, I'm more surprised than anybody else that I found answers. I know a lot of people say you'll never find answers. You'll never find the questions, you will never ask the right questions to find the answers. But to my amazement, all the answers are out there, and you just have to look. And mostly you have to look in the mysticism of different religions. And that's where I discovered the 7 code. And I love to tease that with people. The 7 code is so fascinating to me. It doesn't matter what religion or spiritual perspective you have, the 7 code exists. And, from the 7 chakras in your body to the 7 planets of the galaxy, the original 7 that you can see with the naked eye, what the ancients called the wanderers. Planets, the word planet originally had the meaning wanderers. And so I believe that the 7 planets correspond with the 7 chakras. And why wouldn't that be, the galaxy be basically the mind of a god, more or less? And those are the 7 spiritual centers of that being, in which we are currently choosing to exist as a physical material reality, as a physical body. A lot of the teachers that I talk about, Thomas Campbell, Edgar Cayce, I discovered them along the way. Edgar Cayce's kind of a different story, because with Edgar Cayce, when back in the 90s, I was given a Fairies Oracle by Brian Froud, who's my favorite artist. And I was using that book, and I felt my aura for the first time. Back then it was quite expansive, and I was really amazed by that, because there's a guided meditation for filling your aura. And then at that time I kind of opened up to try to reach a guide, and to my amazement later on I realized it was Edgar Cayce. I got it totally wrong. I wrote Garrett Casement. It was just really funny. When I was first learning in dreams how to lucid dream and connect with not me, I guess you could say, the telepathy didn't work quite well, so I didn't understand what was being said. There were many dreams where I would see my grandma Alta and she would try to talk and I would hear nothing. Because one of the things when you start to lucid dream and work with dreams is that you have to overcome ideas that you have and beliefs that you have in the physical body. And one of the beliefs that I had was that you couldn't really talk to the dead because they're dead. And that was like a long-running series of dreams with my grandma until I just realized she's a spirit, she can talk to me. And so Edgar Cayce also showed up as a guide in my past life reading. In fact, both of the guides that I wrote down their names, Aswana and Edgar Cayce, showed up in my past life reading. They were the ones that I encountered in spirit. They didn't come to get me. And after my past life, my past life was very traumatic. I was murdered in the last life that I had. And thrown into the ocean where I actually drowned. It's a very horrible story. But perhaps if you want to hear the whole thing, I'll share what I remember in a future video. But yeah, trauma is the reason a lot of people come to the path of the seeker. It is the reason that a lot of people start seeking. The thing that I wanted to convey, and the reason why I really wanted to cover this subject in that comment in further depth, is because I did want to share that as things go and you work through the mysteries that you discover and the answers that you discover, things become more calmer. you approach it from a calmer place, and the perspective that you have changes. In the previous video, I shared how it is the fermentation of the light, where the light that you have cultivated within yourself starts to ferment and grow, and it really becomes your state of consciousness in a daily part of your life. I no longer think of myself as separate from the one creator or God or the living consciousness system, as Thomas Campbell calls it. I know that I'm connected. I know that I'm an emanation, that I'm a thought, that I'm a little ball of light when I'm not in my body, because I have experienced out-of-body experiences. And I know that this physical body isn't me. And the more that I walked this path, the more that I was able to embody what that soul wanted to convey, and how much more I've embodied as a result, I guess you could say, the energy of the one creator. And how through the process of learning the different paths of the seeker, from Kabbalah to alchemy to the 7 directions of the medicine wheel, through the Buddhist tradition. In fact, when in 2005, I actually thought about becoming a Buddhist monk for a little while, and contacted someone, and the only reason that I didn't become a Buddhist monk is because I wanted to be a mother. And you can see that being a mother has been one of my main motivations. My sun sign is Cancer, which is the mother and the home. And those were the 2 things I wanted most, and that's what I put all my energy towards. And I achieved both of them despite huge challenges to that path. And that's what I want to share, is that the path of the seeker teaches you to overcome. It's not something that comes easily. The answers don't always come easily. They are more there than they have ever been. There's also more misinformation out there than ever before. There are a lot of people who are taking advantage of people being curious and wanting answers than ever before. Finding genuine teachers and authentic ones who are not just copying others is actually kind of difficult. But trauma is definitely one of the major aspects of the path of the seeker. And that's displayed in the tarot cards. The tarot shows, you start off with the Devil card, which shows the Baphomet, but it also shows the 2 people. And the 2 people are the most interesting part, because they have those chains around their necks. And in Jason Lauderhand's book, Thursday Night Tarot, he says they can remove those chains anytime. They're so big, they could just take them off. They're just like necklaces. And they're kind of forced to take them off in the Tower card, which is the 2nd card in the Path of the Seeker. The Tower kind of forcibly removes the chains. And those chains is desire. It's calcination. Calcination is the first stage of alchemy on the 7 path. It's that desire nature that we have. And we need that desire nature. And that desire nature does connect with Aries. Edgar Cayce described that in Aries is when the souls pushed their way into matter. That's when souls started to experiment with being minerals. They started experimenting with being gas. Then they started experimenting being with minerals. Then they experimented with plants. And then they experimented with animals. And eventually they came to the human body. And so it was actually souls on Earth that drove evolution, which is why it looks so bizarre and it looks like we're bioengineered by aliens, is because souls, consciousness, conscious entities like you and I are the ones who actually drove evolution. And it was our experimentation with material, the feminine receptive part of consciousness, that is the one creator, that drove evolution. And again, without that, the possibility of God, there's no way that scientists will ever come to the conclusion that it was energetic souls that drove evolution, that it was energetic consciousness that drove it. Even though it's evident in the way that you look at the genetic trees. A lot of people will look at it and say, oh, well, it's the Anunnaki who did it. And a lot of believe that we were engineered, but on some level it was the souls who originally created the planets. And there is an oversoul that all of us are connected to, that collective consciousness. And, we drove evolution. But it started with that desire, the desire to know. And I think what most people consider the fall was the desire to know the mind of God, to desire to know what it was like to be God. And it's really interesting that Edgar Cayce explains that the purpose of life is to know thyself as thyself, and yet one with the Creator. And so we broke off at some point to experiment in physical material reality in order to experience ourselves, because by experiencing ourselves to our fullest capability, we actually started to experience the one Creator and the mind of the one Creator. That's why the power of know thyself is so strong, is because through knowing yourself, you know the one Creator. But you have to find that quintessence within yourself. You have to find that prime material and then grow it until you experience the fermentation of light. And really it takes over your life, and it's all that you know. And it's a beautiful experience to hit the point where you have no doubt and you have no separation, but at the same time you know who you are beyond a reasonable doubt, beyond anyone telling you who you are or labeling you or any of that. And like I said, there's many labels that can be applied to me, but I don't use any of them unless I need to convey something like, what I've overcome, the obstacles I've overcome. But again, that's the path of the seeker. The beauty of it is you have all of that breakdown. You have that ripped away, what you thought was reality, what you were told, the American dream. I heard somewhere there was a Gen Zer who said, the American dream is dead. And I was like, was it real? Yes, you can have a family. Yes, you can have a house. Yes, you can have a dependable job, but a wonderful car. But having all those things don't make you happy. The American dream was always kind of the fulfillment through achievement. And if all that came easily, it would never be worth it. But it's more challenging than it ever has been before, which I acknowledge and recognize. And I feel for those who haven't been able to succeed. I fought hard to get everything that I wanted. Being told that you're never going to graduate from college and then managed to do so with an MBA, that was huge, because I have dyslexia. And then landing a corporate job where I was able to make quite a bit of money, enough to put away to afford a house. And, eventually the medical expenses to have my kids and everything else. I've been very, very lucky. And I've worked very, very hard to get to where I'm at. So it is possible, and I think that, in my opinion, as they say, everything is added to you as you walk the path. If you are loyal and you are devoted to the one created, things will be added to you. Is it always easy? No. In fact, it's good that it's hard. I am ruled by Saturn in my chart, and I have a lot of respect for Saturn. Saturn is physical material reality. It is the possibility of death. It's the possibility of losing everything. It's the taskmaster. It's the one that tells you this is the limits and the parameters of your life. But it's also considered the messenger of God, since the one creator is considered to be outside of the physical material reality. In the Kabbalah tradition, there was something called Zum Zum, and what happened was the consciousness that is the creator contracted itself to make room for those of us who questioned. And some call it the fall, but it was that desire mind, that desire to know. And that's calcination, that's Aries, the desire to know. And I had a desire to know the answers. I had a desire to know God. And probably that has been the motivation the whole time, and probably the motivation of my soul to come into physical material reality. And so I'm coming to a level of completion on a soul level. And I have no idea what that means. reached completion. So I wanted to come on here and say yes, a lot of people come to the path of the seeker because of trauma, but the path of the seeker heals that trauma, and then it allows you to go back and look at those traumatic times that tore you down and say, thank God for that. Thank the one creator for that. Thank you for tearing my life down to give me more room for you, more room to desire to know you, to explore, and to learn about myself. And the peace that comes as you walk that path and you come to know, like I said, I believe that there is predetermination. I believe that the planets are there for a reason, and that everything is according to a divine plan, and that our consciousness is moving along to that divine plan, and we've hit that point where we're leveling up in consciousness. Whether it's a new earth that you can tell the difference or not, doesn't matter. We're leveling up. And at the same time, we have the choice of how we react to the energy. We can choose to align ourselves with the one creator, or we can choose to remain on that path of desire and self-gratification and focus on the self. And that's fine too. Some people are not ready to level up. Some people are just ready to kind of become aware that there's something more than them. And it may be vague in this lifetime, and that's fine. But those of us who are, I guess you could say, graduating from physical material reality, which hopefully I am, I don't know, maybe I'm not, because I do love physical material reality, so I enjoy being here. I enjoy different parts of it. I love food, a little bit too much probably. I love sugar, you know, I love doing things, everything about human life. I love going out into nature. So, it would be sad if I don't come back to my other life. At the same time, I'm excited to see what else there is after that. And not everybody can say that. A lot of people haven't become, you know, completely okay with the possibility of passing away.
Lost anger burns, cause I learned to wash away.
But when the time comes, I know that
Buried at night, silent lights swimming in your eyes. Deep in yourself, carry on like a fool. Here in my heart, my ears watch the thoughts so cruel. Blow me away, mold me in vain to kill my prey.
astrology is a real thing. Because, boy, did I not believe it before, 2020 and coronavirus. But after that, after watching the transits and